All right, so it seems like we're where we at. So let's go ahead and get started. So again, my name is Christopher Lindvogue. I'm the Employer Engagement Manager for the Thriving Workplace team. We're very excited to have you at this information session. All right, so I will click the next slide. Right, so Thriving Your Workplace is a program, a public-private partnership that sits in the Mayor's Office of Thrive NYC. We work with local employers to integrate mental health support at the workplace. Right. And so this info session will talk more specifically about what we do, but we shape custom workplace mental health strategies and help organizations and workplaces implement mental health programming. Everything that we do is offered for free. So our consultation work, the trainings that we offer, the resources that we have been able to compile, the events that we host, everything is done for free to help support the resilience of New York City's workforce. All right. So that's all the information we have today. We can end the information session. No, just playing. We're going to go more in particular about how we do this and how we work with employees like yourselves. So real quickly, just the objectives for today. We're going to build knowledge around workplace mental health, right? So some of us have some basic knowledge or base of knowledge. We're going to try to build on that, right? We're going to introduce Thrive in Your Workplace as a resource for your organization. You're going to hear from current TWP employer partners about their experience with our program, right? So we'll talk about the program, but you'll hear firsthand from employers how it has been beneficial for them, right? And then we're going to answer all your questions that you may have about TWP. And lastly, we're going to get you started with TWP at your workplace and help promote mental health at your workplace. So before we do that, let's have a little icebreaker activity. I'm not sure if people introduce themselves in the chat. That's okay. We're going to get to know each other now, hopefully. So real quickly, I have two questions here. The first, why is supporting mental health important to you? Or what does workplace mental health mean to you? So if you feel comfortable, please join the conversation either by voice and by video. We may not be able to see you because the screen share is on. I might close the screen share for this portion. If you want to submit your answer in the chat, that's fine as well. If you want to send it to me directly and I can read it out loud on your behalf, not saying who you are, I can do that as well. So would anyone like to join the conversation and answer one of these questions?
Christopher, it's Amy. I'm happy to share, if that's okay.
Yes, of course.
So, two things come to mind for me, and I'm going to start with the one that I would probably rank as the lower importance, right? It's a business imperative to make sure our people are healthy in all different dimensions of their life, and certainly mental health is one of those. So I think it's important for all the reasons that would make sense for companies like mine. I'm with PwC. And then the second one that I think is even more important than that is we spend so much time at work. And so supporting mental health in the workplace is important to individual success and health of our people. And I think most people do care about their employees and their colleagues. And so that's why I think we should really bring this to the forefront and have conversations that are worthwhile around mental health in the workplace so that both the individual, the employee, our peers, ourselves are living their best lives, and then those business imperatives are also being met as well.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Amy. And we're going to hear a lot more from Amy as part of the PwC team. Anybody else? Would anybody else like to share why supporting mental health is important to them, or what does workplace mental health mean to them?
Hey, Chris. Can I go? And I have some chats to share that were sent to me.
Yeah.
So hi, everyone.
Of course.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Rachel Steinmetz. I'm part of the Thrive in Your Workplace team, but these are two of the questions that sort of guide my working life, so they're very important to me. So I think, to start out, I've always been interested in mental health, and I think it's a really critical piece of, just healthcare in general, and that's something that hasn't always been focused. And then I became more interested in the workplace when just thinking about, I mean, most of us, myself included, are going to be working for many, many years and for a long time. It's where we're going to spend most of our waking hours. And work can be really hard. And, I've, for the last 15 years, seen different workplaces and the different challenges that face them. And so I became interested in what does it really mean to promote mental health in the workplace, to both have employees feel supported, as Shelby in our comments said. I think, her definition or his definition really covered it. Workplace mental health means to me that employees feel heard and supported. They know where to go when they need support, and they don't feel ashamed for taking care of their mental health, which I think is really the crux of it. And it's sort of, how do we support those individuals? And also, how do we create these organizational systems that really allow people to feel that way? I also got a comment from someone talking about why this is important. And they said, I work for a nonprofit organization where burnout is already high. So coupled with the pandemic situation, supporting staff mental health is more vital than ever. And burnout is something we talk about a lot as part of Thrive in Your Workplace. And I think now is a really challenging time for everyone, but also for many nonprofits. And Alyssa and Kelly from the HOPE program are definitely going to talk about, what that means sort of initially, and, moving forward, how to incorporate this. So thank you both for your comments.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Rachel, for sharing your piece and for sharing the comments of some of the participants via the chat and through a message to you. Would anyone else like to share? And it's okay. We'll have a lot of time to engage with each other throughout the session.
Hi, I'm on the phone. I'm in the process of dialing in. My name's Kelsey. I work with First Republic Bank. I kind of think about it in sort of two pieces. So I think about it from the individual and just humane perspective, and then also at the business level. So I think from the kind of individual perspective, whether it's your life or your business, if you aren't able to show up as yourself and you feel like you have to hide, or, if you, do show up for yourself, your career could potentially be harmed. I think that just could be incredibly isolating, and then that just permeates into other areas of your life. And then, take that one step further on the business side. If you aren't showing up as yourself, you have to hide, and you're stressing out and feeling isolated, how could you possibly be performing up to your potential? So I think it's really impossible to look at them separately, right? To, keep, home at home and work at work. Because I think it's part of who we are as individuals. And I think, whether it's general mental health, people dealing with the anxiety around COVID, or if it's people who are struggling with more diagnosed mental illnesses, I just think we need to feel like we can come as ourselves so that we can reach our potential.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. And hopefully you're able to, we'll see your face at some point if you would like, but that's fine. Thank you, Kelsey, for sharing that. So, yeah, a lot of people hit the nail right on the head. And so mental health is important. It affects, all of us, or has an effect on everyone. We all have physical health. We have mental health, right? This is just some data points regarding New York City in terms of mental health and mental illness, right? So as you can see, 1 in 5 adults struggle with mental illness every year. That's here in the city. Suicide is the 6th leading cause of death here in the city, but also nationally, right? This third point, over 500,000 New Yorkers are estimated to have depression, yet less than 40% report receiving care for it, right? And this is just the people that we know who have reported, right? We're not even counting the people who haven't reported. Right. So mental health does affect all of us, either by chance that we might have a mental illness or deal with a mental health challenge throughout the year, or know someone who is, right? As we said, in terms of the workplace, yeah, it's costly to employees and employers, right? As people spoke about, not being able to be your best self and bring yourself has a personal effect, right? So I may already be struggling with this mental health challenge, and now I'm not able to perform as strongly as I want to. That affects my self-esteem, right? And that affects my mental, my how I feel about myself and how I feel about how I'm contributing, right? In terms of employers, it affects the employers as well. As you can see here, one of the data points is depression is estimated to cause 200 million lost work days each year and cost between 17 to $44 billion, right? And so, and as you see another data point, there are more workers are absent for work because of stress and anxiety than because of physical injury, right? And so that's big. And now we know with COVID, all these things are magnified, right? Because of the anxiety around COVID and all of us having to do work despite COVID, right? And so, yes, mental health is important to individuals and is important to employers. But there's good news. Mental health treatment does help, right? So people who experience a mental health issue or condition or challenge, they recover and live happy, active lives, right? When they receive treatment. Most individuals, if they're properly diagnosed and have treatment, they can live very successful lives. We know that to be true, and they can be very productive contributors to their personal and their professional lives. 80% of employees treated for mental health problems report improvements in their job satisfaction and productivity, right? So if I'm struggling with something, but I'm receiving treatment, then I feel more job satisfaction. I'm more able to do my job to the best of my ability, right? This is where employers come into play, right? And so there's a huge opportunity for employers to activate the workplace to support mental health, right? And so we, as we've mentioned, spend a lot of our time at work, not necessarily physically in a workplace, because as we see with COVID, we can do work remote, but we spend a lot of time doing work, and we're going to be working for a long period of time. And so employers have realized this and realized the importance of supporting their employee mental health, the mental health of their employees, right? So a couple things that workplaces can do is increase access to and improve the quality of mental health care. So a lot of people receive their health care through their employer, right? And so a portion of that is the mental health care that you can receive. You may get it through your employer benefits, right? So access to care is a huge component of supporting mental health. Another part is creating a supportive environment that promotes positive mental health, right? And so there are many things that employers can do to create this supportive environment. And at Thrive in Your Workplace, we make recommendations around these areas and others to help employers with that. And I want to point this data point out, which you may have read, but everyone loves return on investment, right? That's a big, and I'm sure the PwC team and Kelsey from First Republic, they are familiar with this return on investment. All of us might be, right? And so the World Health Organization says for $1 that is invested in prevention and treatment provides a return of $4 in terms of improved health and productivity, right? So $1 gets you $4. That's a big ROI right there. So there's the business component of it, but there's also the personal component of it. And so this gets us to Thrive in Your Workplace. And so a lot of employers are becoming aware of the importance of supporting their employees' mental health, but they may not be as familiar with how they can do that. And so this is where our program was born, right? And so as the Mayor's Office of Thrive was in its early stages and introducing everyone or increasing awareness around mental health, members from the business community and different employers around the city wanted to activate on mental health as well, but weren't sure how. And so our program, that was the thought process beyond our program. How can we develop a program that works with employers to help them support mental health in the workplace, right? And so what we do, we consult with organizations and we take them through a 3-step process to help introduce or increase the amount of mental health support and program that is offered at a workplace. So the first step is what we call assessment, right? And so I'm going to go in detail with each step, but real quickly, it's a survey and a meeting with us to explore your mental health goals for your organization, right? The second step is recommendation. All the information that we receive in the assessment period, we use that to deliver tailored recommendations for you of things that you can implement at your workplace to help improve and support the mental health of your employees, right? And so the recommendations that we make come from an evidence-driven toolkit, right? That covers strategies around workplace mental health. We'll get into that as well. And lastly, implementation. After we make the recommendations, you and your team sit back and determine how you want to proceed, but we're with you every step of that implementation process. So we have free technical assistance to help you implement the recommendations that we made, as well as some of the other initiatives that you are looking to activate or continue, right? And so we have the assessment, recommendation, and implementation. So the first step, as I mentioned, is assessment. And the first part of it is a digital survey that we administer on SurveyMonkey. This survey takes 30 minutes to complete in terms of entering it into SurveyMonkey, right? it may take a little more time to gather the information. So what we like to do is send a workplace assessment preview ahead of time in a PDF so that you can take a look at the questions and determine who it is that you might need to work with to get the answers for said questions. All of the questions on the survey are organizational level, right? So they ask about attitudes around mental health, different policies and programs that you have in place, or things that you might be interested in putting in place. There are no questions that are asked of individuals. So you wouldn't see a question that says how many people reported that they're depressed. There are no questions like that. Questions are more so around what type of programs do you have in place to support mental health? Can employees use a sick day and label it mental health day? That's a policy question, right? So no questions that are employee specific, really just organizational questions. So so that's the survey. The survey gets entered into SurveyMonkey. Typically, we work with the HR team, the people team, some members of the leadership team, people that usually have a good understanding of the organization, but also have a pulse on what employees may be feeling as well, right? Or what the needs of employees are. And usually that's the HR team or the people team, right? Lastly, after the survey is submitted into SurveyMonkey, there's a 1 hour interview. Now, we used to do this interview in person, and I'll speak for Rachel and say that this was probably one of the parts of our job that we enjoyed the most, going to different workplaces, seeing people in their elements, seeing different offices. But of course, since COVID, everything is Zoom. So we do the interview over Zoom, and that interview helps us further understand what your goals are in terms of workplace mental health, right? So we flesh out some of the responses from the survey, we ask some additional questions, and we ask you, what do you want to achieve, so that we make sure that we're able to provide the best set of recommendations. All data that's shared between the survey assessment, the interview, any conversations that you have with us, everything is confidential. The information stays within our team and is only used to help you. So it helps us make the best set of recommendations for you, which gets me to the next step. Recommendation, right? So all that information that we gather via the assessment tool and the survey, we sit down and develop a custom set of recommendations for you. So the recommendations come from an evidence-driven toolkit. And the toolkit really is a compilation of a lot of best practices and strategies around workplace mental health. A lot of these strategies and practices are actually from international sources, because a lot of other countries are kind of ahead of the curve in terms of workplace mental health. And so they have laws and policies and programs in place. And so the toolkit, as I mentioned, is a compilation of these best practices and strategies. And they're split up into 5 different areas that we make recommendation. So based on the conversation we had with you in the survey and in the interview, we determine which set of recommendations will work best for what you want to achieve, right? So once we develop those recommendations, this process usually takes about 2 weeks, gives us enough time to really review the information and find the ideal resources for you. We set up a 1 hour presentation to present these recommendations to you. We speak about the rationale, why we decided to make these recommendations, how it aligns with what you want to achieve. And then we talk about how you might implement some of these recommendations, right? So that presentation is an hour. And we are respectful of people's time. So we try to schedule around your time and make the presentation as useful as possible, right? So that's step 2 of the process. Step 3, implementation. So after we made the recommendations, great. We like to stay with you every step of the way. And so we offer technical assistance to help you implement those recommendations. Not just, here's the recommendations, do your thing, we'll check in on you at some point in time. Not at all. We're with you consistently. Send us an email if you have questions about something. We'll sit back, we'll do some research and try to respond to you. So we have one-to-one consultation. And so that's really with Rachel, my colleague, who is the implementation specialist, who is the content specialist, who does a lot of research, who compiled and created the toolkit, right? She does a lot of research and helps identify resources for organizations based on anything that they might need. And we'll have HOPE Program and PwC speak about what their needs were, so you get an example of how that consultation works, right? Another thing that we have are webinars. So we started originally with 10 webinars. Well, we started originally with 9 webinars, and we eventually had a 10th one completed. And since then, we've added more webinars to our website. And the webinars are on various mental health topics. So someone mentioned burnout. We have a webinar on burnout. You know, we have a webinar about access to care and how to identify the best set of resources for your organization, right? We have a webinar. Recently, we've done a couple webinars on diversity, equity, inclusion and how that relates to mental health, right? Because, you know, diversity, equity, inclusion is a mental health issue, right? If I don't feel included, that affects my mental health, right? So we have a webinar on that as well. So we have various webinars. They're housed on our website in the resources and webinar section. If there's time, I will navigate to that so you will see that at the end. And lastly, we have continued learning opportunities via our newsletter and events. So previously we were doing in-person events and now we do virtual events, but different opportunities to consistently learn more about mental health, workplace mental health, best practices, strategies. We have trainings, we have panels. It's been a great adventure putting all these resources together, and we thoroughly enjoy doing it, and we hope that is very helpful. So presenting continuous opportunities for people to learn about mental health. And so as you can see in the corner, and I'll go back, free. You know, all the work that we do is free, and that's we're thankful for the public-private partnership. We have some public funding, we have some private funding. We're housed in the mayor's office, so we are able to work with employers for free. And this is a consultative type of approach that would cost a lot of money, and you know, if you went to a different organization. But we're happy to be able to. There's no cost to you for any participation in this program, in this process, in our events. You know, some of the recommendations that we make do have costs associated with them. Those payments do not come to us, right? So for example, one of the recommendations is around digital health apps, digital mental health apps like Happify and Calm, right? And maybe that's something that you want to make available to your staff. That has a cost associated with it. That cost is not associated with us though, right? We don't receive benefit from that. But that is an option for you should you choose to accept that recommendation and put that in play. A lot of the resources that we have in the toolkit and recommendations and resources that we identify are free, because we know that money oftentimes is a barrier to mental health support, right? And to programming, right? So free, like the TurboTax commercial, although this is legitimately free, there are hidden fees with TurboTax. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with that, but I'm not here talking about TurboTax. So I know that we have had some questions come in via the chat, and I see that my colleagues are answering them. And we'll have time at the end for more questions to answer as well. But now I want to remove the screen share because we're going to hear from, I'm sure you're tired of hearing from me, right? I could talk about our program forever, but we have two wonderful organizations that have partnered with us who are going to speak about their experience working with Thrive in Your Workplace. So first, we're going to have the HOPE Program team. Going to allow them to introduce themselves in a moment, and they'll kick it off with their audio presentation. So let me stop the screen share. Boom.
All right. I'm going to kick us off, but I'm going to defer to my supervisor to introduce herself first.
Oh, thanks, Lizette. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly. Kelly Lobianco, Chief Program Officer at the HOPE Program. We're a workforce development organization. Super excited to be here today and tell you a little bit about our engagement with Thrive in Your Workplace. I'm playing second to Alyssa, who's our real expert here, so I'll let her introduce and kick us off and chime in where I can be helpful.
Thank you, Kelly. My name's Alyssa Gerson. I'm the Director of Work Wellness at the HOPE Program. I'm also a licensed mental health counselor. So the HOPE Program is a nonprofit workforce development agency, and we combine training, industry certifications, work wellness services, internships, and job placement with long-term support. And we have had a long-time commitment to supporting the mental health and well-being of our students. That's what we call our participants or clients. So when you hear students, they're all adults, they're 18 and older, but we call them students. And this was formalized when we were chosen as one of 15 New York City community-based organizations to participate in Thrive NYC's 5-year Connections to Care grant, now in its final year. So we have somewhat of an affiliation with Thrive in Your Workplace because I believe we're under that same Thrive NYC umbrella, if I'm not mistaken. Our students are provided with psychoeducation and mindfulness classes short-term counseling on site, and referrals to long-term therapy with our two trusted partners, Brookdale Hospital, Outpatient Psychotherapy, and Institute for Family Health. And all of our staff are also trained in mental health first aid, which I highly recommend for everybody to take that class once it's back up and running. Motivational interviewing, crisis management through our task shifting. They're encouraged positive mental health outcomes, which we believe lead to positive workforce outcomes. So we believe this for our student outcomes and staff outcomes too, and our participation with Thriving Your Workplace builds upon this belief. So as I stated, work wellness services are an integral part of our comprehensive approach to job training. And we realized our staff would also benefit from work wellness services, especially given the demands of working in a nonprofit setting and the higher incidences of vicarious and secondary trauma. And we also want to retain quality staff and prevent the costly and disruptive turnover that Chris alluded to. And we realized that their wellness contributed to their commitment at HOPE. So a year ago, I attended a workshop similar to this, and I met the Thriving Your Workplace team, and I'm sure Chris remembers that I ran up to introduce myself because I was like so excited. This is something I had been waiting for. And then shortly after that, Kelly and I connected with Chris and Rachel to start the process. And so to initiate it, we realized that HOPE would benefit from having a staff wellness committee. We didn't just want Kelly and I heading this up and making decisions for the team. And so we selected very carefully a diverse group of staff representatives from different departments and combined frontline staff with managers. And we intentionally created a group that would share leadership and decision-making responsibilities across teams and positions. And we met to complete the survey that Chris described, and then submitted that to Chris and Rachel, and they were able to customize some recommendations. But shortly after that was the pandemic, and basically the HOPE program miraculously shifted all of our services from on-site to remote platform. And that was a huge undertaking, and we had to kind of put this on the back burner for a minute, but thankfully in April, we met with Chris and Rachel on Zoom and went over the recommendations that we're just starting to implement now. So the first two steps in our plan that we're working on as we speak is to create a staff wellness mission statement and also develop a confidential survey to administer to staff to better understand their needs. And the staff involved in the wellness committee seem really dedicated to the process. Other staff members are aware that we're creating staff wellness initiatives, and this seems to be a morale booster, especially living and working through a pandemic. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelly to go over a couple other points.
Yeah, thank you, Elsa. Yeah, one of the things that we recognized when we pulled the staff wellness committee together, which was what we hope is like the first of many type committees where we like focus in on a particular issue or framework for our staff. And so this is really a pilot for us more broadly too, is that we know that we're supporting our students through a myriad of challenges as they are embarking on their own career journey. And we've always been a holistic organization that's focused on not just like the occupational skills or the degree or the resume, but making sure basic needs are met, that mental health is at the forefront and considered, and we're connecting folks to care, and then all the other things like housing and, childcare and everything you can think of that might prevent someone from successfully engaging in the workforce. we had been thinking about staff, like we know that those things, when they're managed well, contribute to someone not only attaching to job, but being successful at the job, and retention is super important to HOPE. And so when we were thinking about staff, at first it was like, our staff are going through so much. When you're working with individuals that have a lot of barriers that are coming up, and especially when you're sort of peeling back the onion and seeing all the challenges, our staff, for their own burnout, for their own vicarious trauma, we need to be thinking about how to support them. But the Staff Wellness Committee, sorry, this is a little bit circular, they brought up a lot more than just that. Like, I think all of that was true, and they sort of revealed that, our hypothesis around their own wellness and mental health needs were true, but it was more about culture too, right? It wasn't just the type of work, but it was the work, which seems like a no-brainer because we focus on these holistic needs being met for our students to be successful. And of course, our staff would need that same sort of focus and effort as well. So we've been excited to just sort of unearth some of these conversations with our staff. And I think it's really led to some interesting conversations about culture more broadly. And then one of the things that we had, that Alyssa had mentioned was, we had gone through the steps 1 and 2 in advance of the pandemic, and we were at implementation phase when March and April hit. And initially we were like, shoot, this is really throwing off our timing. We have a lot to do as an organization to make sure that we are staying whole and sustaining, beyond this moment for an organization that was typically all in person. And that was really a big part of our philosophy. But, a couple of months out from it, we actually think it's for the better in terms of this work, because just like around HOPE culture and some of the things that had been unearthed that were beyond our initial thinking on mental health and thrive in your workplace, the pandemic continued to unmask challenges for both staff and students. And so where there was vicarious trauma, it's deeper. Where there were triggering moments for staff, it's deeper now. And so we are really excited to be embarking on the DEIA journey with our organization, and what we're doing with Thrive in Your Workplace dovetails perfectly with that, and has already created, like I said, some of the sort of pilot staff committees that, we're hoping to build out more broadly. And we've sort of started it with Thrive in Your Workplace. So thank you. I'll pass it back to Alyssa. Close us out.
Yes, so just to wrap up, every aspect of Thrive in Your Workplace has been helpful, starting with the initial workshop. I've attended additional ones, especially recent ones that are addressing specific wellness needs during COVID-19. I just actually went to one about vicarious trauma that I thought was excellent. Chris and Rachel walked us through the process. They are always available to answer questions, very responsive. The customized PowerPoint that they created, I refer to it constantly as I plan for our staff wellness committee meetings. And my favorite thing is the Thrive in Your Workplace Toolkit for Employers. It's like an e-book, and I just want to warn you, if you ever get your hands on this, you could get lost in it for hours. There's links that take you to other links, but it's such a wealth of information. I was telling Chris and Rachel and Kelly, like, I read it for fun on the weekend. I don't see it as work. It's just, I'm very passionate about this, serving our students as well as serving our staff. I just think wellness is really important. And we're just so grateful for the opportunity to work with Thrive in Your Workplace. We're looking forward to moving ahead and continuing with our implementation. And we just encourage everyone here to consider engaging. It's free. You have nothing to lose. You have so much to gain. And Kelly and I are happy to talk to you offline or answer any questions, but really can't endorse this program enough. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you, HOPE Program, for that presentation and for those wonderful, kind words. The check is in the mail. Don't worry, I'll send it to you. But one thing that Alyssa failed to mention is that, you know, she did attend our initial workshop back last September, and she was working very heavily on culture and wellness for the organization and putting a lot of effort and was doing a lot of it by herself. And so she was very enthusiastic to engage with us, and we were happy to provide some additional resources for her. So she's keeping it light, but she was doing a lot of heavy lifting previously, and we're just happy to support that. And so she mentioned how COVID was a disruption for them. It also was somewhat of a disruption for us, as it was for everyone else. And so we did alter our programming because of COVID. And so I'd like to turn it over to Rachel to speak more how we, before we get to PwC, how we adjusted our programming and how we are able to support employers now during COVID.
Great. Thank you, Chris. And thank you so much, Alyssa and Kelly. It's always such a pleasure to have the opportunity to work and talk with you. So really quickly, just as Chris said, like everyone else, you know, COVID really threw us for a loop. I remember the Thursday before New York City issued the shelter in place, we were at a large tech company. We were about to go do their interview, and we got up to their floor and they said, you can't come in, you know, no one, we are all working from home. No external people are allowed from the office. We're sorry we didn't reach out, but you cannot come in. And I think that's for us when we realized, wow, like this is really serious, and we're going to have to really think about our program and how we move forward as we like walk back to the lobby. But so we've had to really look at our program right now and make some, you know, shifts in thinking about, you know, what are the previous resources that we created and how to really acknowledge the priorities that have changed for many of our partners and be responsive to those. I think Alyssa and Kelly, you know, we're absolutely right that there were more acute challenges that were present there, you know, how to make sure that they could reach their students, you know, how do they set up people working from home when that's never been something to do. And so we really wanted to make sure that we were being responsive to the reality that there was a lot going on right now. So it was clear there was a need for programming to help both individual and employers and teams during this time. So one of the initial things that we did was develop a COVID-19 guide for employers, which provided leaders with tips about how to communicate with their staff about mental health, templated emails that they could use to really clarify some of the resources that were available. So for instance, you all might have seen at the beginning of COVID, many insurance companies were really changing their policies about how many counseling sessions were covered, resources were available, and we wanted to make sure that leaders were able to communicate that effectively with their staff to make them aware of all these new opportunities, especially at this time when people really needed it. So, you know, once the initial shock from the work from home order ended, we decided to really focus on developing innovative tools and webinars that all employees could access about how to promote mental health now and in the coming months. And I think this also really goes back to a point that I think Kelsey made, that is about that mental health is really a spectrum, and that, you know, we're in the middle of a collective trauma right now that affects everyone. And as Kelly said, you know, for folks who are already experiencing something, it amplifies it. But I don't think that there's anyone right now who's not being affected by the current situation. And so we really wanted to make sure our programming was not just focusing on, you know, mental illness, but really the collective trauma that we are all going through. So from that, we developed our Building Back Better series, which really focused on, you know, what is happening right now and how we can use these lessons learned to improve our future. So it started out with 2 initial panels that really focused on the relationship between diversity, equity, and inclusion in mental health, because we think these issues are very important in terms of providing equity for all of your employees to make sure that everyone has access to mental health, and to examine some of the issues that can come from unconscious bias and discrimination in the workplace that impact individual employees. So we then convened different organizational leaders to really talk about how they're providing those, how they're addressing those complicated issues, and provide some actionable tips for folks to really think about how they can address this with their employees and their organizations. We also developed a training about collective trauma that Alyssa attended. Thank you for your kind words, with a licensed social worker to really talk about what a collective trauma and sort of national disaster means right now, what that looks like for individuals and employees, and how workplaces can really make sure that they're, you know, being responsive and adaptive to the reality that folks are living in. So we've continued to update our trainings, and we have some very exciting trainings coming up focused on the role of managers that are happening in the beginning of October, which these are issues that folks are really interested in, some of the more complex issues, particularly now that we're working remotely. And so we're really excited to share those resources as well. But so this is all the new work, but during this, we wanted to make sure that we continue to be available to our partners. And so we're thrilled that PwC is here, who we started this whole process after COVID hit. So this has been entirely remote. And it's been a really exciting opportunity to sort of try out some of our new program ideas with them. You know, we had the opportunity to sort of look at some of their work, do the one-on-one technical assistance, but also bring some virtual trainings to their staff in a tailored approach. That was really exciting. It was one of the, you know, first times we've done that. And I think really lays the groundwork for different ways that we can work with organizations going forward. And so with that, I will turn it back to Chris and the PwC team to really share the exciting work that they've already done and continue to do.
Yeah, I mean, we're just going straight to PwC, nothing from me, but thank you, Rachel.
Great job. Rachel, Christopher, Kelly, Alyssa, I hear all this and I'm like, sign me up, sign me up. And then I'm like, oh, right, we are. We're signed up, we're good. There's so much great work here. There's so much to unpack in what everyone has said so far. So I'll just give you a little bit of background on who I am and our organization and our partnership with Thrive. And I'm joined with my colleague, Tiara Crespino, who works with me, and really we try to drive the people experience at PwC. So I'm the market people leader in New York Metro. We have 4 different offices in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Long Island. We have about 11,000 people in that geography. And so we're a huge global professional services firm. And we've had our eye on wellness for quite a while. So, right, that's a little bit of the backdrop. We're on a journey. It's been many, many years. And really, as I came back into the New York market, so I grew up at PwC. I've been here for over 20 years and started in our client service practice. And then 3.5 years ago, I came back to lead the people experience for the market. And what became abundantly clear to me quite quickly is, even though we had all this great work and we were, you know, marketing it and we had programmatic approach and all that stuff, when I think about wellness, and as we were trying to hit on each of the dimensions of energy, physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental, we needed to get more expertise in that mental dimension of energy. And so it took a little while, right? We were talking with our employees and we were trying to gather information about what they needed. And we were offering things like, and Chris, you mentioned this, the Calm app for free for all of our employees. We have Brain FM. We do meditation sessions with certified, qualified instructors. And the list kind of goes on and on. But when the rubber meets the road, we know that our people needed more help. And so it had to become more individualized. And what did that mean? And so the timing was great that I received something from Thrive and thought, wow, they have a lot of things that we're looking for. All of these things that can help our people more directly, more of that individual one-on-one approach. And so, you know, I tell you all of that because I think while we had a really strong foundation with what wellness is and how important it is, and initiatives that we can give to our people, benefits that we can give to our people, that we were really only, you know, and still are on this journey and in need of more assistance. And so I had reached out to Sophie, and you know, it's been amazing. There's so much that we could share, and I'm going to hand it over to Tiara in a little bit to talk a little bit more about, right, that assessment approach and the recommendation and implementation. But even from the very beginning, when I reached out to Sophie and said, well, can you just come to a meeting with my people team? So, you know, these leaders that help to drive these types of things within all of these different lines of business and practices in our market at PwC, and talk to them, like tell them what Thrive is, how might you be able to help us, what's the value proposition for them. And after that meeting, it was just, you know, sold. So while everything else that we've talked about around, you know, getting the assessment done and getting the customized recommendations and the implementation, that happened post, you know, the current situation in COVID, really we started the discussion prior. And again, the timing just really worked out because there are so many things that Thrive can do for us and has done for us already that is helping our people, whether it be big groups when we do these virtual sessions or more customized and individual plans for our people as they work through their own mental health needs. And what does that mean as they try to be the most productive, high-performing professionals that they possibly can. So there's a lot there. Before I hand it over to Tiara, the other plug that I would just give, it's, from the newsletter to these webinars, it's a pick and choose. There's just so much there. So burnout is a big thing at PwC. We work our people really hard. It's a pretty intense environment. And so that's been an issue that we kind of think about and try to react to. And really it is a reaction. I don't think we're as proactive as we can be. And now we're trying to, right? By providing these webinars and this information to our folks and really trying to get behind that so that we're having an open dialogue on how do we prevent more burnout, or what does that mean related to people's mental health and the like. And so that list goes on. You've heard some of them. There's a new D&I webinar. We're really focused on, what's going on in the country and beyond with social justice or the lack thereof, and equality and blind spots. And so we do a lot of work in that area too, but Thrive has come in and said, here's another tool. Right now we're trying to help our parents with flexibility and what does it mean, whether children are going back to school virtually, hybrid, they're all in, brick and mortar. What do parents need? And so, it's great. I pick up the phone and I'm like, hey, Rachel, this is what we've got, or what resources are there? And then I get an email 3 hours later with this packed list of what can we do to help and support in that regard. So the assistance has been endless. And again, Kelly and Alyssa, I think I join you in the love fest for Thrive. And it's exceeded my expectations in so many ways of how they can support us on this journey that clearly a firm like ours has been on for a very long time. But with that, I will pause and I'll hand it over to Tiara to kind of talk a little bit more about that point where we did come together for a strategic partnership.
Hi everyone, I'm Tiara, joining the Love Fest with Amy and others. So as Amy mentioned, our experience with Thrive so far has been an amazing one. Understanding that every organization's needs and challenges are unique. They started off with the assessment to help better understand our needs. And I know sometimes when you hear the word assessment, you think daunting, but their assessment was anything but that. It was quick, easy, comprehensive, and it really excited our leaders. And just asked some thought-provoking questions. And after the assessment was complete, they returned personalized recommendations to fit our challenges. I can give one, for example. One of the recommendations was developing manager skills to support employees who may experience mental health challenges. So they ended up facilitating a live training for a group of our managers on how to better support the teams they lead. And it had really great feedback. Our managers are often the first people our staff go to, so it's just really important to make sure they're equipped to have those conversations. As Amy mentioned, other benefits we've cherished and leveraged has been their newsletter and their pre-recorded webinars, and definitely most recently the diversity, equity, inclusion, and employee mental health webinar, given the current climate of our country. But overall, it's been beneficial to partner with Thrive as subject matter experts to really help us take our support for our people to that next level. As we all know, mental health support for our people is important now more than ever. So whether you're just getting started with developing a mental health program, or you've been on this journey for a while, Thrive's a really great resource, and we're just so grateful to have partnered with them.
So happy to hand it back to you guys. I mean, the last comment that I will make, and to me it sounds from, these two different, but yet, I think similar in a lot of ways, organizations that need your help. You meet us where we are. And so I've really appreciated that. I didn't feel like it was like starting over again or taking a step backwards. It was really meeting us exactly where we were to go forward. And so again, thanks for that, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Amy, Tiara. Thank you. We got another check to write. We appreciate that. But we are at 12:55. We'll stay on if anyone wants to stay on past the time. But we want to answer any question that comes our way. Any question that you have for the HOPE program team or the PwC team. We have a question in the chat about World Mental Health Day, and we may be working on something for World Mental Health Day. Thank you for putting that into our thought process. But any other questions that people have about TWP, about the process, how we engage, anything, we're ready to answer.
So in terms of next steps, so it's both Sarah and myself from First Republic. In terms of the next steps, what do you recommend? Because I'll let Sarah hop into if she has ideas, but I think candidly, we'll probably need a couple other people involved, since Sarah and I are not part of HR. We want to just make sure that the people who will move this forward, we can get them on board too, because while we're kind of advocating for this internally, this isn't our day job. So we want to make sure we have the support and the bandwidth from our colleagues to get excited about this. So I think for us, it'd be helpful for us to kind of say, hey, we met the team. This is amazing. We want to, explore this a little more. Do you have anything that we can kind of share? As this deck is great, but just anything where we can kind of get the right people on board so that ahead of us, hopefully scheduling that initial meeting, we get the right people. And so we don't, waste your time and have, minimize that back and forth.
Thank you for that. And so, yeah, we have digital collateral. We have PDFs, one-pagers that we can send to you that you can review to determine what information will go forward would be best. We have the website, which explains our process. The resources are there. So that's a readily available resource that we can send. And we're going to send all this information in a follow-up email. And of course, we're available. We're available for a conversation. My role on the team, part of my role is to engage in this conversation. And so I would love to meet with whoever on your team, anyone that's on this call, anyone that's on your team, to talk about our program and pitch them and tell them why this is important, how we can be helpful, right? And so we actually are recording this session. So this is something that they could potentially watch as well, or some aspects of it. So anything that we can do to help you push this conversation forward, we're gladly available to do that. And so, yeah, it starts with that connection, right? So I'm connecting with you, we're connecting with you, and then you can take us to the next connection.
Yep.
And we can just keep the conversation going.
Great, thank you. Nice.
Any other questions that we have? And so 1:59, but that's fine. I'm cool. My time is for you. I'm on the clock with you all. Let's go.
I saw there was a question in the chat about what companies have you implemented a program with so far, and how long have you been doing this?
Okay, I missed that.
Yeah. So do you want to start out, Chris?
Well, I will say that we work with all types of companies, right? So we work with small businesses, right, that have 10 people, right? We work with large multinational organizations. We work with nonprofits, we work with for-profit, we work with all types of industries. Originally, we started this process to work with the high stress industries. And then we realized there are a lot of high stress industries, right? So we work with everyone, and we, as Amy mentioned, we meet people where they are, right? I'm a social worker, and that's a very big part of social work. That's a very big part of mental health. But every organization is different, so we work with every organization where they are. Some people are at the beginning, some people are further along. Some people need to convince people, we need to build a business case, whatever it is. So we work with all types of organizations. I mean, we've worked with over 30 employers in a very hands-on specific way. We've engaged with, 200 or so employers via events, webinars, what have you. But in terms of this consultation process, we've done it with, I think, over 30 employers. Yes. And Rachel, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that covers it. Brian, you want to?
Hi, yeah, Brian Shuckett, Chief Operating Officer at Uncubed and Media Bistro. thank you both for organizing this, and thank you to the HOPE and PwC teams for sharing your experiences. A few of the questions that I had, which might very well be quick ones. Was it the staff wellness mission statement that HOPE mentioned? Is that part of your resources? Was that exclusive to HOPE? And then are there examples you can share for that? Was the first question. Second was the ebook, the Thrive in Your Workplace Toolkit. Is that something that's already on the site, or would that be sent afterward? And then the third was what PwC mentioned, developing managers to deal with employees who experience mental health issues. Can we get more info on that?
Okay. So let's see. So the first one, in terms of a mental health mission statement, so that is a recommendation that we have in our toolkit, right? Actually, I might cover all three in the same go. So the toolkit is vast. We have 5 areas that we make recommendations. When we work with an employer, we customize it, and we don't necessarily present all of the recommendations. We present the ones that are specific to that organization, right? So one recommendation is developing a mental health mission statement. And so that's one that we did give to HOPE program that they are working on. And so there are resources in the toolkit to support that, but each organization's mission or process through that is different. The toolkit itself is available on the website in its entirety. We do, like I mentioned, make it more specified based on the recommendation, right? And so developing manager skills is another recommendation from the toolkit. It's one that we typically make to a lot of organizations because being a manager is hard. And so we have a webinar around manager skill development on the website available. In the section of the toolkit, there are resources to help develop managers. So if we happen to make that recommendation for you, you'll see all those resources. You can see them now, and then we're continuously adding, or we're continuously doing work to support recommendations. So even though the toolkit is excellent, it's incredible. The ebook is incredible, but we are always finding new resources because the field is developing, and so we will continuously give you new resources. So I think I covered all 3. Rachel, did you need to add anything, or PwC?
Yeah. A lot of our resources are available online. I would just add that we have at October 1st, actually, starting out this new 2-part manager training. The first focuses on sort of just in general, like managing your own mental health. And the second focuses on performance management and mental health. And, you know, this is an issue that's people have asked us a lot about, and I think we're ready to have that conversation. And so I'm really excited. These are 2 new materials, and they'll be sent out in our follow-up. But yes, highly recommend folks come and participate in that conversation.
Yeah, we have those 2 manager trainings coming up, and yes, we're excited about that. Any other questions? And I should have mentioned, if anyone had a question, they could email us after the fact, but I'll mention that in the follow-up. All right, so it looks like we may not have any more questions, which is unfortunate because, I love answering questions. But we do appreciate everyone's time and participation. We will follow up with an email. The email will contain the presentation, the resource that we spoke about, link to the website. So, everything will be there. Our contact information, everything that you can imagine, we'll follow up with an email. We thank you for, being a part of this call. To our partners who, presented, we appreciate you. We thoroughly enjoy working with you and seeing your success and having a small part of that. And so we appreciate you supporting us in this endeavor as well. But yeah, thank you to Rachel and Sophie, my colleagues on the call, for their help in developing this event and helping deliver it. And so, with that, any final words from anyone?
Thank you, guys. Thanks so much. This was great.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much, our panelists. We really appreciate it.
All right.
Take care,
everyone
team.
have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Yeah.